As Lord Lieutenant of Leicestershire, Mike Kapur OBE has been a driving force in his community, a business leader and a public servant whose energy and commitment is endless. Mike's career has taken him from boardrooms to national institutions, but in 2024 his life changed overnight when he survived a ruptured brain aneurysm, an experience that reshaped his outlook and his priorities. Welcome to Brain Aneurysms Beyond. I'm Rebecca Middleton, founder of Hereditary Brain Aneurysm Support and a patient myself. We're a UK charity supporting people with brain aneurysms and their families, and in each episode we'll explore both the science and the human stories behind the condition. Today Mike is back at work and once again serving his community. He joined us to share his remarkable story, and I started by asking him to share a little about his life before the rupture.
Yeah, I've always been busy. My life normally starts used to start around 5:30 a.m. in the morning, and probably not get home until the early evening, if not later. And that could often be 7 days a week as well. So a busy life, and I guess some might describe it as hectic as well.
Your life has been busy for so long, but you were in relatively good health, or would you say you were in good health before the aneurysm came along? Was there any suspicions that there was something wrong before your rupture kind of hit your life?
There was no warning signs that I can reflect that I could have spotted now in hindsight. But also, I think I was in reasonably good health. I mean, I jogged a little bit, not regularly, but, I took exercise. If I had the time to walk into the office, I would tend to walk into the office rather than drive, just to get some exercise and fresh air. But obviously I've had to change a lot of that since the aneurysm, since the bleed on the brain, because one of the things that I did learn in terms of the rehabilitation and recovery process was actually looking after your body also looks after the head. And it became almost a discipline for me to, when I was able to, and got fit enough to start jogging regularly. So now I regularly will try and jog 4 miles most days if I can. I do park runs on a Saturday whenever I get the time to do them. But also I make sure that I have regular intake of water, and also importantly that I take time for my body to recover and my mind to recover. So sleep has become a very important friend to me now, which it wasn't beforehand. I guess I always used sleep as that inconvenient thing that stopped me from doing all the things that I enjoyed. But now I realise the real value and importance of it to not just my physical health, but also my mental health.
And take us back to the day, if you can, when the aneurysm ruptured and when your life changed to a degree. What do you remember about that day? How did it start and how did it end?
That day started like every other day. 5:30, alarm went off, getting ready to get up. By 5:35, not very well at all. I had a sensation of burning feeling in my head, and it seemed to be spreading as well. I thought I was having a stroke. My wife thought I was having a stroke, and so she phoned for an ambulance. As she said, you're not noted as someone that exaggerates illness or anything like that. So when I was in that amount of pain, that's when she immediately called for help, and it duly arrived. But other than that, I remember very little. I just remember the pain and not wanting to open my eyes. I remembered the feeling I had was that I wanted to take my hands and push my eyeballs back to try and stop the pain. It was that intense, that unusual.
And you were taken to the Leicester Royal Hospital. Was your diagnosis pretty quick when you got to the hospital?
It was reasonably quick. So I was taken by the ambulance and the paramedics to Leicester Royal Infirmary immediately under a blue light. I was then in A&E for most of that day while diagnosis was done as to what my condition was. And towards the end of that day, a decision was taken to contact the Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham, where the neurosurgeons are, and they agreed to have me transferred there. And they then carried on diagnosing the issue that was affecting me, and eventually diagnosed it as a ruptured fistula, which they were keen that they fix before they let me go anywhere. So that's how that day panned out.
And then you had your operation at QMC, and assuming it all went well, how was the recovery immediately afterwards?
The first operation went well, but there was a complication shortly afterwards. So after discharge, I was readmitted again for a second operation to relieve some pressure that had built up in the head from the earlier incident. And it was that second operation that I think I had more difficulty recovering from. And that was primarily an emotional response, because when you've had an operation and you're told it's gone very well, the surgeons were happy that it was a success, then to be readmitted in a crisis situation again, you just wonder when you might be readmitted a third time. So that was quite hard to cope with. And I actually got into a position where I sort of almost lost confidence in myself. There was lots of self-doubt crept in. A lot of times, I didn't want to touch my head. I daren't touch my head. I didn't want to open my eyes in the morning because I was just fearful that if I open them, maybe I'm 5 minutes away from another problem. And even when I opened my eyes, it took me a long time to want to get out of bed because I was just so sensitive about what had happened and the two operations. And, for someone who's always been confident in their life, to have the self-doubts I was having really did hit me hard. And that's actually down to the recovery from that was actually down to my family, who decided that, at home, I wasn't to be left alone. I couldn't be trusted to be left alone. So they all reworked their schedules and took a work from home day. So they were all around me, and every day there was always somebody there to keep an eye on me and make sure that if I had any stress or distress, that I was properly attended to.
And indeed, after any operation, it takes an emotional toll. It takes a physical toll. What was that support like to help you get through that, especially that second operation? Did you have the support of the team at the QMC, or indeed the Leicester Royal Infirmary? How did you start sort of plotting a way forward back through to recovery?
I have to say that the teams at the Leicester Royal Infirmary and the QMC, the medical teams, were absolutely brilliant. And if it wasn't for their skills and expertise, I may not be here now. Having said that, once you're discharged, then you do become remote from those medical teams, and you are left a little bit on your own to work out what you should be doing. There's no tick list, there's no action plan that you're given. And I found that quite hard to know what I could do and what I couldn't do. I just happened to be very, very fortunate that a very good friend of mine is a rehabilitation nurse, helped patients recover from strokes. And she came round and saw me regularly and was able to just give me the tips and guidance about, what I could do, what I couldn't do, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, and how to take things easy. And that was actually quite an important aspect for me, that information that she gave, but she gave it to me in an informal way because she was a friend. There was no systematic process in place to support me in the community in a technical way. And obviously my family were always there to deal with anything that I needed.
And that must have been very hard because you are left with many questions not only about your recovery, but why did it happen? And as you say, just how do you plot your way forward? How do you manage your fatigue? How do you manage your energy? And how your family can support you as well. So you were very lucky to have that nurse with other patients indeed have also kind of struggled to get that rehabilitation as well. So that must have had sort of an impact as well on your sort of outlook and how that recovery path looked like for you and for all those who were helping your family, who were helping you as well.
Yeah, life becomes very lonely And I was surprised how lonely I felt, even though I was never alone. And it was little things that I'd always been used to doing and then couldn't do, temporarily, as it turned out. But for example, being a chartered accountant, numbers is something I really enjoy working with. And so I regularly do Sudoku puzzles, and I can do them very, very quickly. After I was discharged from hospital, the first time I picked up a Sudoku puzzle, even a very, very easy one, which I might be able to normally complete in 2 minutes, I was 10, 12, 13 minutes before I could even get anywhere close to completing it. And that was worrying, because it made me wonder whether the just old me just didn't exist anymore. And that feeling of loneliness and what is the future going to look like? That was actually something I found really difficult to come to terms with. I learnt in the end to just keep practicing, things I used to do that I used to enjoy, but practice them slowly and not get frustrated if the old me wasn't visible, because I'd always hoped that I'd get back to a sense of normality, which I ultimately have been able to, but it does take a long time. Fatigue is something that's quite strange if you've never experienced it before. Fatigue, the fact that you know, if you wake up at 8 in the morning, by midday you really can't keep your eyes open again, and you have to go for a lie down for a few hours. That's a very strange feeling, particularly to someone like me who'd always been very active. And as I say, you know, sleep used to get in the way of me doing all the things I wanted to do. And now it had to become one of my best friends. And I still take sleep very seriously. And it's simply to make sure that the fatigue element of what happened doesn't reoccur again.
How long did that path take for you to then feel like, I'm coming out the other side, I can see the old Mike? Or did you leave the old Mike behind and you have had to learn to kind of develop and grow into somebody who can survive beyond the hemorrhage?
Yeah, a little bit of the old Mike got left behind, and I think that was for good reason. It took me about 10 months from the first operation to coming back to full duties, full-time work. Within that period of time, I had a gradual return to some duties, but it was 10 months before I came back to full-time working. And one of the things I left behind actually was an inactive lifestyle. I thought I was actually keeping fit, but actually I probably wasn't keeping fit the right way. And so I started walking at a brisker pace, then I started gentle jogging and walking, then I started jogging longer distances, and now 5K runs, park runs, are something that I do religiously, because actually it gives me the discipline to want to train for those park runs during the week, which actually then leads to other health benefits.
Every journey, Mike, is as unique as you know. Did your surgeon offer you any information about why the rupture happened when it did? And from that, how did that impact your recovery journey and going forward?
The surgeon, I did ask the surgeon whether I'd done anything wrong, whether I could have avoided the rupture. And his answer was that he didn't think I'd done anything wrong at all. There was no indication that anything I'd done in my life or lifestyle was the cause. His view is it could have been a DNA defect. It could have been a birth defect. It could have been a trauma in the head, a bump that may not have been severe, but had been sufficient for the body to find a workaround in terms of the way it grew and developed. Could have been there all my life for all he could assess. And I think because of that, it does mean that we just don't know why people get them, but we do. And what we know is that everyone probably gets it for a different reason. And what we have to do is learn to work within that individual nature of the conditions that we have, and really just try and find a way. to go forward individually ourselves, learn from people around us, learn from hopefully any of my experiences that I've shared with people today, but always be themselves, and actually not to feel guilty if you've had an aneurysm, because I thought I had done something wrong, but I was told categorically I hadn't. And I think that would be right for just about everybody that's had an aneurysm. They haven't done anything wrong. You just have, it's a condition we just have to learn to live with, and live with better as well.
With your running, with your walking, and with all that sort of physical exercise as well, and as you say, it's a great benefit on your sort of your mental health as well. And was that a side that was hard to recover from as well? Because it's a trauma. It's a trauma to go through something so sudden, so quickly, and to see the impact on the family as well. What helped you kind of recover from a mental point of view as well as a physical point of view to come back to where you are now, which is remarkable, which is back at work, serving your community and being as busy as ever?
I think that the one aspect of the journey that is often not understood is, and you touched upon it earlier, when you get the incident that happened to me, a bit of you does have to disappear. And what you end up doing is almost forgetting who you were. And I think trying to learn who you were and are again is something that took a lot of time. I think it was probably about 7 or 8 months after my first operation that I started to realize that actually I was looking at things through a lens that I needed to get away from. And that lens was fallibility, whereas I'd always looked through a lens of invincibility, that everything, don't worry, everything will turn out right. We can a can-do approach. What I started to do was almost look at life through being fallible, and that things shouldn't be done if they involved a modicum of risk. So starting jogging for the first time was really difficult to do, because I was worried about the fact that what happens if I have another rupture. Going to work or thinking about planning to go to work full time, that was difficult. Whether I should go on holiday with my family, because I was afraid of flying, what would happen in my head if I flew because of atmospheric changes and things like that. So all of those things meant that I was actually looking at life, I think, in a way that was probably going to mean that the proper me was never going to come forward until I actually would try to reach inside and try and remember who I was. And that takes time, and it's not easy. And that self-reflection, I think, is something that it's a valuable exercise for people to go through when they've had a trauma like the one that I had.
Yeah, indeed. That self-reflection and trusting yourself again and trusting your body again when you have been through such an incident like that. So has it changed your outlook and your priorities for the better? Do you feel like the new Mike, the Mike who has been through this, who has survived it and has been on that 10-month rehabilitation journey, that actually the old Mike would be really proud of the new Mike and what he's achieved, and now how he's approaching life again with all the energy that you had beforehand?
Yeah, I hope the old Mike would like the new Mike. I have a renewed energy. I have a renewed sense of purpose. One or two people have asked me, has life changed? Has my outlook changed? And I've said, look, I've not found any spiritual routes forward or spirit changes to my spiritual outlook. But what I have learnt, though, is that life is pretty fragile, and our bodies are pretty frail. And we probably don't appreciate the frailty of our bodies. That 1 minute I was okay, and literally at the flick of a switch, I was not okay at all, and potentially may not have survived. That does change your perspective. What it does do is give you the impetus not to put things off that you want to do. If you enjoy something, go and do it. If you need to go to work, go and do it. Don't put off tasks at all. Get them done, but also enjoy the people around you. Because ultimately, when things go wrong, it is those people, your friends, your family, that are the ones that will give you the strength to keep going forward. So that, I think, is something that has changed my outlook. The fact that I'm fitter than I think I've ever been since my 20s is something I'm quite proud of. I've now stopped saying no when my wife wants things, on the grounds that, if she wants it, then we've got to do it. And so I probably do more things that I probably wouldn't have done in the past now. But I think that's important as well, because, whilst the condition that I had was very personal to me, its impact was to a wider group, and that was my family. And that's something that that came home to me, that a key component of our family was very, very ill, was causing everyone to have to change the way that they did things for a while. And so it was incumbent on me to try and get back and be that normal person, or as normal as I can be.
Looking back now, and looking back, you're back at work, you're back serving your community. Looking back, what were the toughest parts? Was it the impact on your family? What were those moments that kind of, you look back now on those sort of dark days, those dark mornings or dark nights, which were hard to get through? And if you could give advice to people going through that right now, what would be your advice of how to get through those dark times?
I think the advice I'd give to people, and what I benefited from in those dark times, was I then stopped thinking too much about the future. I think sometimes when you think too much about the future, you forget the here and now, and the here and now needs to be dealt with. So deal with the issues in front of you. I had a daughter going through A levels, and it was particularly concerning to me, the impact that my condition and my illness was having on her as she was doing her A levels. If you think too far into the future, you then start to think about the fact that, will I ever be around to see her get married? Will I ever see her go to university? All those things are actually, that they will take you into a dark place, I think. So I think what I benefited from was working in the moment and thinking in the moment, and trying not to think too far ahead. And that actually allowed me to take each day as it came, each step as it came, each day try and be a little bit better than the day before in terms of recovery. And if I could just achieve those little steps, then I knew that if I kept going, that things would work out okay. Whereas if I thought about trying to come back too quickly, take all of my responsibilities back quickly, the chances are it may have taken me a lot longer to recover, but actually I may not have recovered as well, because I may have slipped back into poor health again. And the one thing that I think always remains an anxiety, if you don't know why the condition occurred, you just wonder whether it'll occur again. And I think it's that not knowing and wondering about the future, too far into the future, that can sometimes keep a lot of those issues foremost in your mind, or uppermost in your mind. And I think, just look at what's in front of you and deal with that, and keep doing it that way. And I think for me, that was a key component to my recovery. And, it's gone well for me. It's worked for me. And I'd certainly advice I'd give to people is that, take it slow, take it easy. Don't get depressed. Don't get down. There will be plenty of people want to work with you and help you. But each day at a time is the way to approach it, as opposed to have a long-term plan.
Brain aneurysms, many people say when they've suffered a rupture, I'd never heard of a brain aneurysm, or I'd never heard of subarachnoid hemorrhage. Or for you, brain aneurysms had touched your family. You had experience of them. How did that sort of impact how the family came around you to support you through your rehabilitation, and your family's understanding of the condition that you had survived?
Yeah, but sadly, the two other incidences of aneurysms in our family, the family members didn't survive. One was the same age as me when it happened to him, and another one was a teenage niece of mine. She was 14 when it happened. So I think when I first had the bleed on the brain, the aneurysm, everybody thought that that's probably the outcome that I may suffer as well. That we'd seen it twice in our family, close family, and tragically we'd lost two family members. That hit them all quite hard. But I was convinced that after the first operation, and the surgeon said to me, "I'm very happy with what has happened and how it's gone. And he did say to me, I will have you playing football again if that's what you want to do. And those words were actually quite reassuring to me. So I think that, brain aneurysm, we know it's a serious condition. We know that sadly some people will experience it once and that will be the end for them, tragic as it is. But I guess what I want to do and what I'm going to spend the rest of this year and the rest of my life that I'm able to do is to use my experience to try and help others just come to terms with the fact that, there can be a real sense of normality that comes out of this incident that they experience, and that all isn't lost. And even if in the early days they struggle to get back to any sense of normality, if they remain positive and if they have right support around them and they're given the right information, actually they can make a full recovery or a fullest recovery and live a life that they can be proud of and will be as full as they ever wanted it to be.
Many thanks to the Lord Lieutenant of Leicestershire, Mike Kapur, for sharing his story with such honesty and insight. And as always, thank you to our producer, Rob Burney. For more updates, resources and behind the scenes footage, follow us on Facebook, Instagram or LinkedIn. And if you found today's episode helpful, please feel free to subscribe and leave us a review. For more patient guides and useful information, take a look at our website, hbasupport.org. Thank you, and until next time.